Hello! Today I'll be unboxing the iPad Air 13-inch M4. This just came out. It's the refreshed, updated iPad Air with the new M4 chip, and this is actually my first time getting a 13-inch iPad, like the iPad in the bigger size. This is my current iPad. It's the 11-inch iPad Air, and all the iPads I used before this were just base model iPads, iPad 9, 8, pretty much the same size as this iPad, so it's very exciting to finally get something bigger. Here is the sort of size comparison, and as you can see, it's quite a bit bigger. So without further ado, let's get this iPad right over here unboxed. It's beautiful. It's huge. It's thin as well, actually. This thing is massive. Yeah, look at that screen size difference. Inside the package, you also get this paperwork packet, as well as a 20-watt power brick and a braided USB-C to USB-C cable, which is very nice. All right, I'm gonna go set up this iPad, put some apps on it, put a screen protector on it, put a case on it, and I'll be back in a couple of days with my first impressions and initial review of this device. Well, it's been a bit meaning over a month. I unboxed this thing, I think like sometime in early March, and now it's almost May. It's like April 29th I'm filming this on. So, gulp. But yeah, I've been using this iPad Air M4 13-inch, kind of swapping it in and out with my daily driver, the iPad Air M2 11-inch. And here are my thoughts. So first off, performance-wise, I have no issues with this thing's performance. It's got an M4 chip. My MacBook that I used to run this entire YouTube channel has an M1 chip. So performance, this is not lacking. If anything, it's overkill for a tablet like this. And it's kind of funny because we have the MacBook Neo with the mobile chip, and now we have the iPad with the M series Mac chip. So it's kind of swapped. One thing that this generation of M4 iPads kind of improves on over the previous generation is the RAM. Previous generations, like the M3 and the M2, they had 8 gigs of RAM. This thing has 12 gigs of RAM across the board now. And you can definitely feel it. Like, I would be opening apps in the background that I haven't opened in like a day or two, and they would still be in the state I left them a day or two ago. And they wouldn't have to reopen because they were just kept in the RAM. That's how nice the RAM usage is on this computer. Sorry, not computer, iPad. But it's basically a computer. It has a Mac chip. But yeah, performance is great. If anything, like any of these M series iPads are gonna have excellent performance. Even the M1 iPads from like 2021, 2022, those are still gonna last a really, really long time. This thing will probably last you 10 years in terms of performance easily. But the rest of the iPad isn't gonna age quite as well. Most noticeably, the display. Now, the iPad Air has been using a 60 Hz LCD display for a while now. For the average person, this display is perfectly fine, but tech enthusiasts might not like it because it's not as smooth as 120 Hz displays. If you have like any iPhone Pro from the 13 or later, or if you have like an iPhone 17 or any iPad Pro since 2017, you'll know what it feels like to have 120 Hz on an iOS device. The iPad Air, this $1,000 tablet, still doesn't have that. It's still using that same old 60 Hz panel LCD that the iPad Airs have been using for a couple of years now. There's no real meaningful display upgrades with this thing either, with the M4 generation. That being said, there's nothing wrong with the displays on these guys either. Like, they're perfectly fine for note-taking, watching videos and stuff. But if you want a really nice display on your iPad, look at the iPad Pro. Those are OLED displays, so you get deep blacks. They're very sharp as well, very nice colors, and of course it's 120 Hz, so you get that very smooth refresh rate. One thing I have noticed is that the bezels on the iPad Air M4 13-inch are actually, they seem to be a little slimmer than the bezels on the iPad Air 11-inch. So that's something kind of interesting to know. Like the 13-inch iPad Air, because it has seemingly smaller bezels, as well as just an overall larger screen size, it looks much nicer than the 11-inch iPad Air, which has thicker bezels and also a smaller display. In terms of battery life, going from an M2 to an M4 or an 11-inch to a 13-inch, honestly, I don't think it really influenced the battery life in any way. Like, the battery life on this iPad is maybe a little better than my 11-inch iPad Air M2, but that might just be because it's a newer iPad, it's a newer battery. Like, I'm pretty sure they're all rated for the same hours of battery life anyways. I think it's like 10 hours for both of these devices, regardless of screen size or performance. Like, honestly, this video is going to be me talking about going from the 11-inch to the 13-inch more than going from an M2 to an M4. Like in day-to-day use, I honestly couldn't tell the difference between the M2 and the M4. Which brings me to my next topic, and probably the one I'm going to talk about the most, and that's the size. Switching from an 11-inch screen to a 13-inch screen is very, very nice at first. Like I was like, wow, I have this giant canvas for all of my notes now. It's super nice to use the Apple Pencil on this full-sized, like paper-sized iPad. Actually, let me get a sheet of paper real quick. So this is just your standard printer paper. I don't know if it's A4 or letter size, I don't remember. But if we take it to the 11-inch iPad, it's like slightly smaller, about the same size. But then if we take it to the 13-inch iPad, it is pretty much the exact same size. So basically having the equivalent size of, oh shoot. So going from this, in comparison, tiny little device to this giant paper-sized tablet is very nice, especially for note-taking, and I imagine if you're an artist, this is a very nice upgrade as well. And for using the iPad as a computer alternative, it's much better as well. Like obviously, like this is closer in size to an actual laptop. I used an ESR keyboard case with this thing and it felt better because like the iPad is bigger, right? So you can have a bigger keyboard, which is closer in size to something like a laptop keyboard, which is very nice. So full-size keyboard essentially. As a tablet though, it just wasn't for me. It's too heavy and too chunky compared to my 11-inch. Like after using this thing for a while, going back to my 11-inch, it felt like a breath of fresh air. I thought I wouldn't like switching from the bigger iPad to the smaller iPad because it would feel more cramped or something, but I actually appreciated using the 11-inch iPad even more after using the 13-inch iPad for a bit. Like I slapped this iPad into a folio case and I used it to read and stuff, and it was so nice. It felt like an iPad mini. It felt like a normal tablet size. Like this felt like a natural tablet size compared to this, which is just a tad bit too chunky. For some people, size doesn't matter, but oh boy, 2 inches makes a pretty big difference. My use case for an iPad is essentially it's either a tablet or a smaller computer that I bring along with me when I don't want to carry around my full-sized MacBook Air laptop, right? This is quite a bit smaller in footprint than my MacBook Air. Like for example, if I'm traveling out and about all day, but I know I'm probably gonna need to do some sort of computing task, I'm not gonna bring my whole laptop. I'll bring this thing with its little keyboard, and it's much more comfortable to use this on the go than a laptop. And of course, I also like using this just as like a regular tablet. And having a 13-inch version of that tablet, the 2 extra inches, it kind of makes it a lot more cumbersome because now I have a tablet that's also the same size as my MacBook. So at that point, why wouldn't I just bring my MacBook and have the full computer functionality? Because with the 11-inch iPad Air, yeah, it doesn't do as much as my computer can do, but it's smaller, so it's more portable. It's easier to carry around places when I'm traveling and out and about. I don't get that with the 13-inch. And even like using the iPad as a tablet, the 13-inch is still a tad too big. Like I was mentioning before, the 11-inch size is just much more natural for me personally to be reading and watching stuff and just holding it in general. It's not too bulky. There's definitely a market for the 13-inch iPad though. For example, if you just want more screen real estate, that's a totally valid reason to get the 13-inch iPad. Also, if you're like an artist or something and you want that giant canvas, or even if you're a student and you want a bigger surface to take your notes, like I really enjoy taking notes on this thing because of how nice and big it is. And yeah, if you want to explore the idea of using an iPad as a computer, then 13-inch is probably the way to go. It's similar in size to an actual laptop screen, like the MacBook Air over here, that's 13 inches. This is also 13 inches. So if you want to use your iPad as a computer alternative, then again, 13 inches is probably the better choice for you, especially because if you're going to use a keyboard case, the keys are going to be closer in size to like a regular laptop keyboard rather than smooshed down like on the 11-inch. I don't mind how small the 11-inch keyboard is though, to be honest. But it does, like it is a smaller keyboard. The big screen is kind of making me consider trying out using the iPad 13-inch as my full-time main computer for a bit. So stay tuned for that, I guess. Maybe I'll make a video about it. But yeah, overall, compared to the M2 or even the M1 models, this doesn't feel like a big upgrade. Like this just feels like a bigger version of the tablet that I already have. The only major difference between the size of these two tablets as well as the increase in RAM is the chip, the M2 and the M4, and I honestly can't tell the difference between the M2 and the M4. Maybe like 5-10 years down the line, it'll become more apparent, but at the moment, these two perform very, very well, and both chips, regardless, are overkill for iPadOS, in my opinion. It's just because Apple makes so many of these Mac chips, they can just pump them out, put them in iPads because it's so cheap for them to make. But I don't know,
these feel like two different sizes of the same tablet. Unless you really want that big screen real estate, I don't know if it's worth the hundreds of dollars more to go from 11 inches to 13 inches. Like, you're entering 11-inch iPad Pro pricing territory at that point. But yeah, that's my initial review of the iPad Air M4 13-inch. Sorry that took so long to get out. I had finals and stuff to worry about. But yeah, I do have a couple more iPad Air M4 13-inch videos prepared in the pipeline. For example, I'm going to be comparing this thing to a MacBook Neo. I also have a day in the life vlog that I've already filmed, but I haven't finished editing yet. That'll also feature this iPad. So if you're interested, then consider subscribing. Anyways, that's pretty much it for this video. Be awesome and stay techie. Bye! Alright, I'm gonna go set up this iPad, put some apps on it, put a screen protector on it, put a case on it. Yo, what is going on downstairs?
No, I don't want to know.
This is a test of my microphone. Yeah? Is it good? We're using a measuring tape today. But yeah.